This is Jonathan Lane from Fan Film Factor, and today I am here with two out of the three of the Holy Trinity of FARRAGUT Forward. The first is director Johnny Karzai of Chaotica Studios, and the other fellow is Paul Sieber. Johnny is the director, and Paul Sieber is the evil villain. Um, And they are both co-writers along with the other member of the Holy Trinity who is not able to be with us tonight, but he will be here for a part two at some point. And that is John Broughton, who also stars as Captain, soon to be Admiral, we think, Jack Carter of the USS Farragut. But we're here today to talk about Farragut Forward, which just came out and I think has like 40,000 views in the first 48 hours. People are watching your fan film, guys. How does it feel to finally be done?
Like we just finished a 5-year mission. I think Ramel, first AD, said that it's like we had our very own 5-year mission, and now that it's over, we just kind of get to take a breath. Paul, what do you think? How you feel?
Uh, for me, it was to me, it was in surges. There was a surge of, then nothing, because just the way Prescott's role was broken up into it. So, I didn't have the pressure level that Johnny did, because when it was over, I was like, when's the next shoot? When am I going to come back up? And I was like, oh, I want a little bit more. And going like, do I have another scene? Can we do another scene? It just, so my experience was actually a little bit different. He has to be exhausted. I've been partially, when we did Starship Farragut: The Crossing, I kind of took over as post-production supervisor. How you do it, I don't know. That's herding cats. This is an amazing role. No, you have to be exhausted. You deserve like a 2-year vacation after 2 years of filmmaking.
All good.
Oh man, by the way, for those that don't know, Farragut Forward is the sequel fan film to the fan series Starship Farragut, which aired, I guess, which released episodes from I guess about 2007 to 2016. And then had its finale just a few years ago. I think what, in 2021 was it? Homecoming.
2021.
Even though that was filmed in 2016, it actually featured
Yes.
Stan Lee, filmed obviously before Stan died, in a cameo as an admiral. But
And
the
Dick
Farragut,
Deisel, Count Gore.
yes. Yeah, I mean, you guys had some wonderful guest stars. You had animated episodes as well, and one of them starred the voices of Tim Russ and Chase Masterson. And
Yes.
you guys did.
I had animated scenes with Chase Masterson. I can always say that's as close as I'm ever going to get.
My husband died 7 years ago saving others in one of New York City's most horrific tragedies. Are you prepared to die for others as well?
Yes, I am. It's what I've trained for most of my life. Security Regulation number 47 states,
Is that all life is for you? A series of rules and regulations? Well, life is much more than that. It's something to be cherished and appreciated. But you don't have anybody to live for, so life has no meaning for you. I'm sorry. That wasn't fair, was it?
your apology is unnecessary, but you aren't wrong.
Wrong? Wrong about what?
I do have a family, Miss Renata.
It's Carmen. But I thought...
This ship and her crew, they are my family. I may not be very good at expressing my feelings toward them.
Do you have a first name, Commander Prescott?
Henry.
Well, it's nice to finally meet you, Henry.
Sending emails back and forth with voice work. That's as close as I'm ever going to get. But it was still pretty cool.
Well, Starship Farragut, for those that don't know, were the folks that built the sets initially that ultimately were then used also for Star Trek Continues and are now still in existence as Neutral Zone Studios, currently in Georgia for just a few more months before moving, I believe, to Central Florida. But anyway, yes, you are the reason that Star Trek Continues was able to happen in the first place. All of that work on those initial sets. So it is nice to know that Farragut also continues. Now, here's something I have to say before we start talking about things like pre-production, production, and post-production. Sometimes I say to fan filmmakers, it looks so good, and you make it look easy. You guys didn't make it look easy. You guys made it look hard. I mean, it was stunning. I mean, it was, like phasers on stunning. It was just, it was gorgeous. It was amazing to look at, but it was all like going above and beyond the Call of Duty. It was just you did things that weren't necessary, and yet they just added so much to it. Like, in addition to having the most amazing Monster Maroon uniforms that anybody's ever seen in a Star Trek fan film, you also had cadet uniforms, you had medical uniforms, you had engineering uniforms. You had the bomber jacket, which is one of my all-time favorite Starfleet uniforms. You had the landing party jacket. You even had the uniform for the guy getting the tea from the person in the center seat, from, what is that, like, hospitality services on board the ship.
Undiscovered country.
Exactly, with the white gloves and everything. You had the Klingon uniforms. Obviously, you had the sets. The sets were amazing. Not only did you create, the bridge set and the sickbay set and the corridor set, you create a 360-degree Klingon bridge set. Under the headings, other things you didn't necessarily need to do. I was watching the scenes of the wounded in sickbay, and there's this shot that lasts for like maybe 2 seconds of this guy who's like he's burned. 2 seconds on screen. I'm guessing he was probably in makeup for like 3 or 4 hours. For 2 seconds, and and the crowd scene. Okay, I was talking to Josh Irwin about this. I said, how many times have you seen a crowd scene in a Star Trek fan film? And Josh said, well, like almost never. There's like been one or two of them. I think there was one crowd scene like Katoomba, but in Star Trek New Voyages, and I said, well, there's a reason for that. And Josh says, I know, because first of all, getting people to a crowd scene is logistically a nightmare. Making sure they're all there long enough to film it, and then of course filming it itself. But not only did you guys have a crowd scene, you had a crowd scene at night. And for those of you who don't know, filming at night is a lot harder than filming during the day, because you have to light everybody, because the camera can't see as well at night. And so you have to make sure everybody is lit, that the camera is set properly to get the people who are in the back as well as the people in the front. And so as I'm watching this fan film, and now I'm going to put fan film in quotation marks at this point, as I'm watching this fan film, I'm like, holy crap. Just all of this stuff that I'm seeing. It's a treat for the eyes, it's a treat for the ears. And it was just, it was a masterpiece, guys. I have to say once again, just congratulations.
Thank you. Super kind. Yeah, we had a few options over the last few years when we were shooting. Well, should we do this the easy way or should we do it the right way? And we never took I said this at our premiere party the other night. Never, not once did we ever consider taking the easy way out on anything. Even that night shoot, to be honest, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but that night shoot, we shot 90% of the way through production. That was the last big shoot with principal, cast, and then all that crowd. That nearly wore everyone out. We knew it would going into it, and we did it anyway. It would have been easier to find a warehouse somewhere and dress it up and, just make it easier on ourselves. Do it in the daytime, like you said, in a forest. Sure, that'd be the easy way out. But would it hit the same notes we wanted to hit with the overall film? No. I wanted nighttime. I wanted fire. I wanted sparks and embers. I wanted my teal and orange. I'm a filmmaker, so you got to do teal and orange. And I wanted to open the movie up and just get it off those bridges, those beautiful bridges that those guys work there.
Amazing.
I just wanted to really open up Act 3 of the movie and shoot it somewhere that allowed us to breathe and take up the space. And we didn't have any fans or fake wind. When you see wind blowing through people's hairs, that was real wind. But it tiring but worth it, especially now that it's over.
I'll tell you something. Because I was there when they were looking for extras. Obviously, I couldn't be an extra. I'm in Los Angeles, and they were filming this. It was Virginia, right?
That was Virginia. Yeah, that was Hopewell, Virginia. Yep.
But I contacted a bunch of my friends in the area. I said, hey, you're close enough to Virginia. You want to try to get to it? But anyway, I was looking at the weather and I was just like, it's gonna rain. I don't want them to be rained out and you can see so many people there. It's just like keep your fingers crossed and it's gonna be okay. And it was. I mean, it looked like it was perfect awful weather for you.
Right.
Just cold enough to make people look like they were miserable, but just clear enough that you could get everything you needed.
Yeah, and it was 2 nights, and we did the extras the first night, just all the background folks. And I think we were originally shooting for about 100, and we didn't hit 100. And then anytime you plan things like that, you always have an attrition, drop off rate on the day of anyway, and we prepared for that. And I think we still ended up total. I think we had 60, 75 people out there, and we did the bulk of the crowd stuff, all the crowd stuff, the Friday night. And then we only brought principal cast members back on Saturday night to do all the close-ups and all the things we didn't need 70 people standing around looking at us. And one last night we had to feed everybody. One last night you have to kind of take care of everybody and keep them warm. So, and big kudos, by the way, to our production management team for planning the whole movie. But that shoot specifically was logistically challenging for all the reasons you mentioned. And you know what? I think we're all glad we did it, though. We to your point earlier, we never hit the easy button on anything, especially that. So
yeah, it blew me away. Okay, so I want to go back in time to 2016 or whenever it was where you first came up with the idea of, and this might be a John Broughton question as well. I don't know. I saw it in a post, Victoria Avalon, who plays Dupree in this, and she's been in a whole bunch of different fan films. She's currently the captain of Dreadnought Dominion right now. She's been a captain in one of the Potemkin Pictures fan films, and she's also your Chief Dupree on this. But she was mentioning that she remembered talking with Paul about the potential future of his character of Prescott. And she had a wonderful picture of the two of you on the transporter chatting about this. So Paul, are you the reason that Farragut Forward exists? Is it your baby? Is it John's? Who came up with this idea?
Everything Farragut is John's baby. Prescott was mine. Ironically, the first episode that I really penned for Farragut that I was proud of was The Price of Anything, and Prescott wasn't even on the show anymore. So, but John asked me while they were filming Conspiracy of Innocence, he said, boy, Price of Anything just had such a good response. Can you write something else in? And he said, it'd be so great if you came back and you play Prescott again. And I said, yeah, it's not a character I want to keep playing. I felt like I did everything I could with it. The stoic, clean Marine, this disciplined guy, loyal to a fault, but follows the book. He was a fun character to play, a fun character to create, but as an actor, the challenge of it was gone. So I said, look, I'll write you another episode. I'll write you a big story. I said, but I'm killing me. I said, I'll come back once and I'm killing me. So he agreed to it. And so I wrote The Crossing. And so we went through a couple iterations on that one. And we had the whole story at the end, but the evil Prescott and the evil Prescott gets killed. So we still had that good and evil versions of me, but they both died. It was over. There was no end to it. So as I said, I ended up doing most of the post-production coordination. And I'm working with NeoFX, who was doing the special effects at the time. And we had this idea that when the ISS Farragut got crushed, that this piece of software got, it'd be like some kind of hope. And then it was like then the Romulans get it. Okay, so then I added this post-credit scene, and John just went nuts. He loved it. He said, that was good. It's probably the end of it, the crossing, everything's kind of done. And I said, you really need a finale because you haven't really kind of kissed everything goodbye. And so then I wrote Homecoming. And I stuck in this post-credit scene where you find this guy with one side of his face all bandaged and burned up and one arm all in a Romulan prison camp.
Get up, Federation!
Never.
Call me Federation!
I set up this whole concept that I was coming back, but not me. The other one that I just got that little tiny bit of time with. And then, and I kind of started pitching to John the idea of like, look, I set this up through 3 episodes here. It's in place. It's just like if you have a Khan story, that's great. Then you've got Kirk versus Khan, but this has been set up over and over in little bits and pieces. And I said we should do a revenge thing, but instead of it being like Khan, who was an opportunist, like, oh, they found me, I can go after Kirk now. Prescott had like 15 years to lay out this methodical, horrendous, torturous thing to do to them from taking away what he thought he deserved. So I had envisioned this guy doing this. So that was kind of the first pitch I gave to John about this whole revenge thing. Then he came back to me with this story concept. He goes, well, what if we did it like this? Next thing you know, boom, I'm doing the draft out. And then I say Johnny's on board. And then Johnny comes in and he's the one who knows how to punch up this here or get rid of that over here. He does that trim and punch it. And then he comes up with things, oh, the Shackleton expand from the RPG because he played that. So this was a really collaborative effort. But I think I kind of set up the whole evil Prescott revenge on Carter many years later. I always wanted it to be many years later. That I kind of set it up back in 2012. So it's been, for me, this has been something I've been waiting, more than a decade.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, to see it.
Oh man, that just makes it all the more mind-blowing that you wanted to kill off your character and then you came back. You thought you were out and you pulled yourself back.
I pulled myself back in.
All right, so Johnny, I want to talk a little bit about pre-production, but I also want to talk about how you came to be a part of this project. But before that, let's meet Johnny K for a bit. And before we meet you, I want to mention that we're recording this couple of days after Farragut's premiere, and you're heading down to your home state of Tennessee tomorrow, where there's been a lot of damage from Hurricane Helene. And you are doing something beyond just going back to visit. What is it that you're doing?
Well, I mean, I'm in Tennessee and it's the volunteer state. We've
Good point.
I'll get choked up talking about it, but no, we help people, that need help. So yeah, the truck's going to get loaded up. I did a little bit of fundraising up here, just, from willing and awesome people who decided to help contribute some money and got some money together and going to stop at a Walmart a few hundred miles out of town on the way down and just load up the truck with as much water and diapers and batteries and flashlights and masks and gloves and 5-gallon buckets and shovels. And, there's a lot of folks, not just in East Tennessee, where I'm from, Western North Carolina, just right over the mountain. I don't know the media is doing a great job in between everything else that's going on the planet right now. I don't know that the media is showing how awful it is in some of those mountain communities. So yeah, I don't want to get myself choked up talking about it, but we're gonna try to do some good over the next few days.
Yeah, we're just I mean, we're very impressed. We're all behind you. We talked a little bit before this. Was Johnny going to do any kind of crowdfunder or whatever? And he said, no, it's just locally. He raised some money, but he said this is just something he's going to do himself to help out his community. So tip of a hat to you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the plug.
So anyway, Johnny, you are a director. Now, I'm guessing you went to film school, right?
Never did.
Never did.
Never did. My film school was I got to work on some Hollywood sets, just here and there, off camera or on camera stuff, working background, just a lot of productions that came through Virginia. And I was lucky that on some of those productions they didn't chase background away and herd everybody back to tents and cattle cars to sit there and eat all the fruit snacks for 12 hours until they call for you. Some of the shows I worked, they didn't care if you were behaving yourself and if you weren't a nuisance and if you weren't in the way. You could sit there and you can learn and observe. And a lot of the folks I was with slept, read a book. I was more interested in what decisions were being made. How does the first AD, communicating with the rest of the crew? What's the DP saying? The director, listening to why decisions were being made. I like that stuff. And that was my film school, and some of those shows, it wasn't just a day or two here and there. I mean, some of those shows I was on, 6, 7 weeks, something like that. So that's a lot of education. And, a standout director I remember is Kevin Hooks, who I later found out, his father, whose name escapes me, was in Star Trek 3 as the Admiral, which I never actually connected that. And, anyway, Kevin Hooks directed Passenger 57 with Wesley Snipes. He went on to direct some episodes of, I think, the Punisher series on Netflix, some of the Marvel stuff. And he specifically, just watching him work and watching his team and his crew around him, just kind of inspired me. And then one of the guys on set, coincidentally, a guy named Jerry Morgan, who I went on to cast as Sergeant Frank Kelly in our Batman fan film, The Oath. Jerry Morgan and I had a great conversation on the first day we met about something called the 48-hour film contest. And he said, yeah, it's you get assigned a film topic on a Friday night. You have 48 hours to write, shoot, edit, and put
Oh, wow.
together your own short film. And it's turned in Sunday night, and it's a contest. And I'm a procrastinator. And as soon as I heard him talk about the 48s, that was an inspiration to me, because it told me, you know what, maybe I could get off my butt and make a film and stop procrastinating. But instead of giving myself 48 hours like a psychopath, I gave myself 60 days. And, at the end of that 60-day period, I'll either have a movie or I won't. And at the end of 60 days, I think it took me 62, if I'm being honest. I had a little short film called The Killer of Grassy Ridge, which I was very proud of. Proud of it just for me. I didn't care if anybody else ever saw it or liked it. I was just happy I finished something I started and put it on YouTube to see what happened. And what happened after that is it got picked up on the festival circuit. I think we hit over 50 festivals worldwide. I think we won 14, 15 awards: best debut, best U.S. short film, best cinematography. I mean, this was kind of an experimental little first short film. It wasn't supposed to be winning things. And went all around the world, ended up streaming on Amazon Prime, which was a huge thing. And then that was my first short right out of the gate. And then
that was your first. And by the way, folks, that was my first. That was my first Johnny K experience, by the way, because I needed to interview him back when I first heard about his involvement with Farragut Forward. So that was up. He was still working on Batman: The Oath at that point. So the only thing was The Killer of Grassy Ridge I had to look at, and I'm like, this is like Blair Witch Project. I mean, it's and just really tough camera angles and such. I mean, you had the camera like right on the ground in certain cases, and it was not easy to film. And when I talked to Johnny a few years ago and discovered that was his first ever film, I was like, holy crap. So if you have a chance, the Killer of Grassy Ridge it's still on YouTube, right?
Still on YouTube. Yep. Actually, just re-released on YouTube not too long ago. So it's there.
So yeah, check it. Really, I mean, and I know I say, check it out. You're really like, oh, check it out, check it out. Seriously, just go watch it. It's really amazing. And even more amazing than that is, of course, the multi-award winning Batman: The Oath, which is a prequel to the Michael Keaton Batman. It basically takes place maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks before Michael Keaton's first Batman movie, and that was spectacular. And I really want to talk about Farragut Forward, but you want to talk about The Oath for just a few minutes?
I won't eat up any time. I'll just say we actually, just in the last week, we hit 1 million views on YouTube for The Oath. For Hollywood, that's nothing, but for a tiny little independent film studio, 1 million views is a really big deal. So that's all I'll say about it. Just really appreciate all the support for that film.
And now, is any of this helping you build a career as a director, or people approaching you to work on bigger films and more expensive, better paying films?
Yeah, there's some of that. I love the independent film world, and cut me short here because I can go on this for a while, and I don't want to monopolize time, but I love where the independent film space is right now. It's not the greatest environment in Hollywood right now with everything going on, but in the indies, there is so much untapped potential out there, and there are so many streaming services who they need content. They need content, content, content. So when you look at it from an indie filmmaker's perspective, the demand is extremely strong right now. The technology and the barriers for entry to get into filmmaking in the first place are lower than they've ever been. You know, we shot Farragut Forward on a $3,500 camera that Steven Spielberg would have killed someone to have 40 years ago. And I'm walking around with this thing basically in my pocket, you know. So all these things in the indie film world are very, very exciting right now. So yes, I've had some conversations with folks, and they all kind of hinge the mark of success. Wow, you're going to go out to Hollywood. Well, you know, I don't know that I would be happy. You know, and don't get me wrong, I probably wouldn't turn much down, but I'm very happy with where indie film is right now, and I think we're in a great place and a great time to see a lot of untapped folks out there kind of bring their A game. So I don't know that I'm going to be on the next bus to Hollywood making a Michael Bay feature. I don't know that that's what I want to do. I think I might want to tell a 10-minute story in a car with no dialogue for 10 minutes and put it on YouTube and see how it goes. But
Well, I'll tell you something. As a person who lives in Hollywood, not that I work in Hollywood or anything, but I have a lot of friends who work in Hollywood, including my son's godmother, who was actually a VP at NBC for a while, and she was overseeing a bunch of sitcoms, and she said, you know, I get paid to opine. And what she meant by that is she was basically paid to give her opinions, but her opinions were basically the things that told the people who knew what to do in the shows what to do, which of course was not necessarily what should have been done. Like there was somebody in the 1990s who came up with the idea of giving Ross a monkey in Friends.
mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this will be brilliant. People love funny animals, so let's give them a monkey. Everybody hated that monkey. You know, and it's like, but there's an executive out there who's paid to opine, as Lou said. And so the thing about independent films is that it doesn't matter who opines unless they're signing your paycheck, which they're not. So you get to do what you want, which is why I'm guessing one of the main reasons that Johnny would prefer to stay in the world of independent films where he can do what he wants as opposed to adding a monkey.
Enough monkey business.
Enough monkey business, exactly. Alrighty, so how, Johnny, did you become involved in this project that was in John Broughton's mind at that point?
Yeah, it actually happened after the Killer Grassy Ridge. John came, and John and I have been friends for years. And John came to the premiere party for Killer Grassy Ridge, and I don't remember exactly when the conversation was, but he mentioned to me. He said, "Hey, I've got some ideas skipping around in my head." And at that time, Farragut Forward was a little 2-minute teaser, which eventually became our prologue. You know, John just wanted to kind of test the waters and put the Monster Maroon on and see how the internet reacted, and that ultimately became our prologue. And John asked if I would be interested in coming on to shoot and direct that. And what appealed to me about it is, one, it was a small commitment. It was going to be a 2-minute piece. We could shoot it in a weekend. I told John at the premiere party that this has been the longest weekend of my life, because that was 3 years ago, I think. But it ultimately became the prologue. I was excited about it because it was the movie era of Trek, which I love. That's my real love for Trek, is Wrath of Khan through Undiscovered Country. I love those years, and so he kind of hit me with those two things. We can shoot it in a weekend. It won't be a heavy lift. It won't interfere with The Oath, which we were also shooting at that same time. We basically just took kind of a weekend off from The Oath to shoot prologue, and he had me. I loved it. If he had offered me a 60s era show, from the classic Starship Farragut, I don't know that I would have been interested in it. Just not my aesthetic, not my style. Appreciate it for what it is, but I don't know that I would be the right person for that. But the fact that it was movie era, I heard Wrath of Khan mentioned a lot. I heard Undiscovered Country. Definitely had some Klingons in there, which always look good on film. And my brain just went to, you know what? Yeah, let's kill the lights, turn it down, haze up the room, and let's make some Star Trek. And that became our prologue. And then shortly after that, then I was hooked. That was my gateway drug. And then the next thing you know, this awesome script that Paul and John had written for Farragut Forward came my way for me to have a look at, and we were kind of off to the races from that.
So let's head back to Paul, so we can hear your voice again. And now, how involved were you in pre-production, Paul, or is this like something I'm going to have to talk to John about when I finally get to interview him?
I was too a bit from mostly from the scripting aspect because once we had once again John gives me a story and then that story for me became a screenplay and then that screenplay goes to Johnny and then Johnny has some stuff, so there was a lot of back and forth for a bit. I mean, we really went back and forth. That's why so many of the little more subtle elements of the story came into play. It was that whole uh, time that we took to really refine as we were starting other pre-production elements, like they started like gathering set elements and started costuming. We were still refining that script back and forth. And I can remember that it was one of the very last script meetings we had before cameras were getting ready to roll. And there was something about Bilal dying that wasn't meeting something. And I don't know if it was Johnny or me or both of us at the exact same time. We went guys like, he's Koroth's dad.
Yeah.
It was like the one
Oh,
of the very it was just
that
it
was
was
the
like out of
peanut in the
nowhere.
M&M. That was it. That was the missing thing.
No, it's Koroth's dad, and we all looked at each other kind of like, oh yeah, oh yeah, and then because we were already talking about doing but that's kind of personal. This is just another guy, but no, that's dad. It was so there was that kind of back and forth. So I mean, that was the biggest thing. And then I had because of playing Prescott, I had to get a life cast done for all the different moldings, and we had to do a lot of makeup tests. So I had a lot of that going on. I had to work very closely with Belle, who was, basically my costumer. She's created the whole look of Prescott with the wiring and lights. And so I was, other than the
You were
script, I
kind of a
was
walking
really
action
heavily
figure, by the way.
involved in, yeah, becoming, a toy. Um, and not the toy that's the first
With
one you
light up
buy,
action.
Yeah, people want to read Richards with, like John with the hair, the magical hair. So it's, that was what a lot of that I was wrapped up in. And then, I tried to talk to Johnny because, I wanted to know what he was thinking about Prescott, what he thought wanted to do. And so I was doing a lot of pre-production on who I was going to be. I know that sounds selfish, right?
No, it is exactly what you should do. And let me ask you a question because there were some very good performances in this. I mean, there were certainly some fans who were doing fan acting, which we all it's a fan film, folks. Don't complain about it. It's what we do. We try to have fun in this universe. But there's certain definitely stand out performances, and by far, my friend, you just knocked it out of the park. I mean, you were
Thank
evil
you.
incarnate. Do you have acting experience and
Uh,
training?
I I did theater when I was in college. Back when you wrote on a chalkboard and it was chalk. So we won't get into the
I was
time
there back
frame
then.
on
No,
that
no, it's
one.
all right. It's all right.
But I had been out of it for quite some time, and then when I met John and we were getting ready to do the first Farragut, and that was around the same time I had weight loss surgery, and I lost about 200 pounds, so I was kind of a different person. And so we shot the first Farragut thing, and I had no idea what I was doing. I wrote it. I had never written a screenplay. It was written in Word. Um, I directed it. I had no idea how to do that. I did camera operation. There's some scenes that are so incredibly blurry that it's unbelievable that we even bothered to use them at all. It was pretty much a horrible experience, but the worst part of it was seeing myself on camera and saying like, "You stink." I know what you're trying to play, and no, like when you did theater in college, you did a pretty good job, but this is no bad. So that was like, there's one solution to when you don't know how to do something. Time for acting school. So I went right back and I started getting a lot of professional training. I got training in improv, stage, and screen. So stuff it branched out. I did a few years back. I did a one-man show called Bases Loaded. It was about a friend of mine wrote it about being a little league dad. He had four sons that played little league. So I basically was playing him, but with my humorous twist. I've been on I've been on some professional sets. I have a few movies on Amazon. I have a lot of stuff on YouTube. Uh, but I made an amazing discovery after, working with Farragut and a lot of things we like to do, and that is, I hate directing. I love directors, but I hate it. It's not for me. But I like to write. I like to craft a story, and it's great when I get the opportunity to do that with something like Farragut, because they didn't always have the people to do the story. They could find somebody to work with to kind of direct it, but what they didn't have was a screenwriter. So, once I kind of caught that itch, I just, went back and I took screenwriting class. So I started understanding, format, dialogue. And, I had a good friend of mine that was a filmmaker. I started working with him and checking it. So I found out the two things I like to do was I like to play characters and I like to write the stories. But what I found out about with the characters is I am not a leading man. I am a character actor. So for me, particularly if I'm writing something for myself, that character will be so much not me, in any way, shape, or form. And that was the beauty of Prescott, because good Prescott was not me. Evil Prescott is not me. So, but there are elements of me in both of them. I mean, obviously, as a person, but so
Especially the
that
evil
was,
one, by the way. Yeah.
well, that's the one people want me to be. Because the other one, people used to say that character's so boring. So, and then, the final decision when I started, kind of pushing, doing the fan film stuff like that. I've pretty much been divorced from fan films for quite some time. When John brought me back and said, I'm going to do that Farragut Forward thing after all. And I said, okay, then when it's over, I have to, I have to die. So,
How many times do we have to kill you, Paul?
you know what? I've died on screen so many times I could fill a cemetery. I died in Star Trek 5 times. So, so.
And we didn't shoot it. We ran out of time in Hopewell, but there's actually a shot that I wanted to go in Farragut Forward where it was just going to be after all the action was over. I wanted to just cut back to Prescott laying dead on the ground with the audience expectation that, oh, he's going to twitch a finger or he's going to open his eye or something. And the point of the shot was just to show that, no, lights out. He's gone. He's dead. But we ran out of time. Other shots took priority over my little Prescott dead body shot laying on the grass. But
well, you know what that means, don't you? Prescott might not really be dead.
that's right. We left the door open accidentally.
You know what? We did the same kind of a trope when we did The Crossing, because there was Tackett trying to beam Prescott out and save him. There's always that, and the poof coming out of the transporter, because it's always that last second transporter thing. And it was just like, boom, the ship blows up. You go to Tackett, he puts his head down, empty transporter pad. He didn't get out. So I love that kind of a thing. I was willing to lay on the ground for an hour to let him film that.
All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the sets and the costuming. That was going to be John Broughton's part to talk about. How much do you guys know about set construction and costuming?
I can brag about our set guy. John really will. John is the best to talk about costumes for sure. But yeah. The set guys, I can, definitely, Scott Einoff is our set director, Dave Moretti, who's co-executive producer on the film. We called him our chief engineer for sets. And then Rodney Garrett is our lead carpenter, and backed up by an army of volunteers that just spent every weekend cranking those things out. I called it blood, sweat, and plywood. Just that's the work that went into Farragut Forward. And another example of, we could have hit the easy button and, green screen a lot of this stuff. And I'd kind of always had it in my mind. There was just something special about the 80s era of Trek films that we were trying to capture that I don't know green screen would have fully sold that effect. If you look at Farragut Forward, like it's a period piece, and I guess all Star Trek fan films are period pieces, but we were really trying to capture that early mid 80s vibe. And in my opinion, you really needed the plywood and the practical sets. to help. And not to mention, it helps the actors when they're, actually working in a real environment versus, me trying to tell them, what is coming at them right now. But the set guys just, and a shout out to their families, because those guys just spent so much time building just the Klingon sets alone and the corridor and the sick bay, just those alone. I mean, that was remarkable. And
I
then
mean,
they,
had you built just the bridge, I
right,
think fans would have been like, "Holy crap!"
right,
Just the Farragut bridge, and of course you reused it again for the Copernicus bridge. And had you done just the bridge and sickbay, I think fans would have been incredible, and a corridor, it's like, well, you add in the corridor, whatever. The Klingon bridge, for God's sakes, man, what were you thinking?
yep,
You even had a ceiling in that thing.
yep. It was
Oh,
completely enclosed. Yeah, it was just incredible. Just everything they did was incredible. It exceeded all expectations. They actually even surprised me with the Klingon bridge being a 360. I didn't expect
oh,
it
you
to
didn't
be.
even know?
I didn't know. I had mentioned it, but I'm filmmakers say a lot of things. It'd be great if we had this, and then you have a set guy, and you have an accountant that both, pass out for 5 minutes. But
What we say in filmmaking, by the way, and I can say this now that I've made a film. What we say in filmmaking is there's must have and there's nice to have.
right, right. And I was notorious for, just a laundry list. So, it'd be nice to have, it'd be nice. And one of the things I mentioned was, it'd be nice. We're not going to do it on the Federation bridges, have that 360 viewer and all that. So with the Klingon bridge, it's smaller and we have enough room in the facility we were shooting. So wouldn't it be cool if we actually had a front end on that thing so we could 360 around and show some stuff on the viewer? And I said that, and I understood the budget situation and the logistics and the hard work and all that, but they actually ended up pulling it off and they surprised me with it. I mean, I didn't walk into it. They gave me a week or two heads up so I could plan how the hell I was going to light it. But they absolutely surprised me with that 360 bridge, and yeah, partially enclosed on the ceiling, and those guys just worked incredible hours. Not to mention all the graphics teams and all the folks that put together all those accoutrograms, and that was no small task either. That's not something that was cranked out in a couple of hours. So just the whole set team, just hats off to those guys.
Yeah. By the way, I decided in prep for this interview is I counted the names in the credits. You had 55 people listed under set construction crew. 55. In interlude, I had 55 people working on the entire interlude. I mean, that included cast and crew and background and special effects and music and everything else. You had 55 people just building your sets. So, holy crap.
Yeah.
Now let me ask a question. Now you said you were surprised by it. Were you surprised by it? Like, is it okay? Close your eyes, walk in, and then you looked at it and you discovered that they had done all this, or had they told you like just before you got there, or shortly before you got there, we've done this. How was the reveal? What was it like?
I had a week or two notice for sure, because I would, I just needed to have the strategy, and they knew that. They knew me well enough to know that don't surprise him the day of, because I'm coming into that day with a lighting strategy, et cetera. Right. So no, I had a week or two notice on it, but I think the first time I saw it might have been these guys are designing the sets on the, what do you call it? It's the 3D, it's the architecture software, the 3D CAD stuff. They had designed the sets with that, so you could rotate around the bridge, you could see it and rotate around. And I think I was actually sent a file, and I saw that the 3D CAD model of the Klingon bridge was an enclosed 360, and I think that was how I first learned about it. Then I had to factor in, how the hell I was gonna, or it's a great set to look at, but when you start trying to place things like dollies and sliders and tripods, and you run out of room in an enclosed set really quick. And I think we intentionally left one of the walls as a breakaway wall, just to be able to get in when we needed. But it was became a little challenging to fit the crew we needed in there, plus the cast, plus haze it up, and then try to figure out how to light and shoot it. It got that space got tight pretty quick.
Yeah, I could definitely tell. And for those who've never seen sort of a behind the scenes or making of, and I don't know if you have any photos of this, but when you're actually filming, even just a few actors on a closed set, there are so many more people that are there. There's the guy holding the boom mic, and there's people holding reflectors, and there's the director, and there's the AD probably around there somewhere, and there's gaffers and the guys with the lights and whatever. I was on the Voyager set once during the filming of the Swarm, during, I guess, season 2 or something like that. And there was a scene on the bridge, and Janeway was giving an order, and it's tight on Janeway, and there were, like, I don't know, 16 people around her. And of course, in the final episode, all you see is just Janeway. But there's, like, it's like literally, it looks like a party, like a whole bunch of people. There's one person in the middle talking, giving, like, the story. It's crazy. So, if you have, like, a small set, I can only imagine how crowded that was.
Farragut was no exception, and there was the one exception to that was the spoiler here. The sickbay scene at the very end of the movie where Smithfield is leaning over
Oh, by the
Tackett.
way, if you haven't watched it yet, for God's sakes, watch it.
Time,
We're about to spoil a big thing for you.
time to watch it. When Smithfield's leaning over the sickbay bed and Tackett's there, Holly Bednar, the very talented Holly Bednar, was pouring her heart out in that scene.
She did an amazing job in that scene. I
And
was crying.
well,
I had tears in my eyes.
she got to me in the rehearsal. When I watched, the rehearsal, we were doing the rehearsal, and I saw what she was putting into that. I cleared the set. I absolutely cleared the set. And we were shooting this about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night after a very long day. That was the last scene that we shot in sickbay before sickbay had to get struck and rebuilt into something else the next day. And when I saw that level of intensity and emotion that Holly she was going all in the rehearsal, all those 50, 60 people that you just mentioned that were kind of loitering around, I cleared the set. And I said, let's get everybody out of here. I think we shot that with maybe 2 or 3 people, just the bare minimum. The lights were static. We didn't need anybody for that. But I didn't want Holly to, feel the pressure of being watched by a huge audience as she's pouring her heart out. So we cleared the set for that. And I think hopefully that helped her. I think it did.
Well, it was brilliant. I mean, it came out incredibly well.
I need a shower and a shave.
Yes, you do.
Hey, babe.
By the way, speaking of sick bay, for anybody who's been watching me occasionally raise my hands and sees that they're taped, there's going to be a bunch of people wondering, why is John's hands taped? Just really, really quick. About a week ago or so, a little less, somebody reached into my car through an open window while I was in the car, grabbed my iPhone, and started running away with it. And I, like the stupid, overweight 57-year-old that I am, started running after him, yelling, "Hey!" And did not notice until about 16 steps into my hot pursuit that my right shoelace was untied. So in addition to being overweight and 57 years old, I was also tripping. And I fell onto the pavement, did a belly flop, landed on both my hands and my knees. There is no skin over here right now. So yeah, John got mugged. Anyway, sorry to interrupt the interview for that, but I know people are just like, what the hell happened to his hand?
Glad you're okay. That's rough.
Yeah.
Doing better. It's healing. It's been about 5 days of putting cream on my hands every day and then wrapping them. And my left knee is actually, really, it's not that anything's broken, but just the bending of it, the skin stretches, and
You can't be sitting in that new hot tub you just built now.
Can't be sitting in the hot tub. No. I can go into water for a little while in the shower in the morning and watch it very gently with soap.
Yeah, but you got all that beautiful new pool and hot tub, and now you can't enjoy it.
Yeah, it's my new pool
Yuck.
hot tub.
Especially after the effort it took to get it. So bad.
Yeah, this is part of the interview where we talk about Jonathan and his life in his pool. Now let's get back to Farragut. Okay, so anyway, let's talk. I think obviously we're deep into production now. So Johnny, as the director, what are you doing on a regular basis? I realize this is going to be the next 3 hours. You're going to tell me what you've done, but no, what is a typical shooting day for you like, and before the shooting day, and then?
Yeah, I'm a huge planner. I'm a huge pre-planner. I typically have the shot list plus my storyboards that I, they're typically just for me, just little sketches so I can remember just little certain things that cue me. I try to come in as prepared as possible because I hate feeling like I'm wasting somebody else's time, number one. And number two is we, like every film shoot ever, we didn't have a lot of time. And this is actually something that, Star Trek fan film folks might find interesting. A lot of the other fan films have all been shot on existing sets. So those are standing sets that, if you don't make your day on Saturday, stick around Sunday, we can get it. Farragut Forward, those sets, Sick Bay, perfect example. That set was standing for 14 hours, maybe.
Wow.
You'd better get your shots. You'd better not miss anything. And I don't shoot plates. I didn't want to go back and shoot plates and then try to, green screen people in later onto a background. I was really trying to avoid all that. It's a lot of pressure to make sure you get your shots because the set's not going to be there in 3 hours. It's going to be a different set. And, that's how all of Farragut Forward was. Even the bridge, that beautiful Federation bridge, we shot that on a 4-day weekend. And I think we shot all day. It was a holiday weekend. I think we shot all day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And it was a sprint. It was a race against time just to get everything we needed in, so you never have time, never have enough time. So I always try to come in just as prepared as possible. I spend a lot of time thinking about, just the little things. If I want to shoot Prescott's got an eye patch on his right side. Well, half of Prescott's face in any given scene is going to be dark and the other half is going to be lit from behind. So do I want the eye patch side in the darkness or do I want it in the light? Well, let's put it in the darkness because then if we have any mess ups with the makeup, it'll be less noticeable. It'll look cooler on the shadow side. So now that defines Prescott, right eye patch. He's going to be on this side of the screen in the darkness. That then dictates how the camera needs to be for whoever Prescott is interacting with, whether it was Wes, whether it was William, whoever the other actors are. So I try to come in with that already knowing Prescott always has to be here because I have to shoot him from this angle. That then informs everything else I'm going to shoot around that. Now that's a process to get to for me. It's kind of like putting a puzzle together. But once I start cracking the puzzle for any scene, I usually try to come in as prepped as I can, just out of respect to not wasting anybody's time as I'm trying to wing it, on the day of. So.
And where does Johnny K stop and the director of photography? Because for folks that don't know, there's the director and there's the director of photography. Now, some fan films aren't big enough to have two different folks, so sometimes there's just a cameraman and a director. But when you have a director of photography, there's a lot of decisions that are made by that individual. So what was that interaction like for you?
Well, it was easy because I could just talk myself out of bad ideas and listen to my own good ideas. So I had it easy on this one, John. Honestly, I was co-writer with Broughton and Paul, and I knew I would be editing the film myself. So the old story, like there's the film you write, there's the film you shoot, and there's the film you edit, and those can sometimes be three different films. So in this case, I had it, and I think it helped the production overall. Maybe it made us a little more efficient. Because when we wrote the script years ago, I could already see, the finished product for a lot of those scenes in my head. So when I helped co-write it, I could kind of see how I would shoot it. And then as I was shooting it, I could already see the edit. And then when it got time to actually do the edit, it's just a matter of, getting all those ideas and pictures that were in my head a couple of years ago. Now we have the footage. Now it's just make it look like that. So, more work, absolutely. But there's also benefits, and also didn't shoot a lot of, unneeded stuff. I didn't overshoot a lot of coverage. There was no point in shooting things I knew weren't going to be in the final cut. I didn't waste a lot of time with getting all the wides and then all the mediums from, a couple angles and then all the tights. And we also didn't have time for that. So I tried to, trim the fat out when it came to shooting a lot of that, only shoot what we need, get to the end of it and see. And in the case of Hopewell, we got just enough coverage by the skin of our teeth. We got just enough coverage. I think we used everything we shot in Hopewell. It ended up in the film. There was, and some of those things were 1 or 2 takes because that's all we had time for. So,
yeah, and I'll tell you, it's a very tightly edited fan film. There's a lot of, and this is a longer fan film. I mean, I know the guidelines. Everybody's like, the guidelines say it can't be more than a half an hour. It's like, okay, it's more than a half an hour. If Paramount wants to go and talk to these guys, let them. I don't think they're going to have an issue. Mostly because they've just been purchased, and I don't think anybody wants to be the one to have to go to talk to the fans while, the new bosses are in town. So, but anyway, hey, it's a gorgeous fan film. Yes, it ran over. It ran like what? It's about 51 minutes, 53, something like that.
Yeah, 52.
Okay, I averaged.
You're
Um,
close.
but when you see a 52-minute long fan film, a lot of times you're just like, okay, it's going a little slowly. They probably didn't need this scene. That you really had everything in there that you needed. It moved quick. There was no point where I was just like, okay, get on with it already. I mean, I love fan films, but there's some things that can be indulgent. But you trimmed all your fat. There was a um, very fast, nicely paced thing. And we're going to talk about editing in just a little bit, but I wanted to talk about Paul. I wanted to talk to Paul a little bit. What was your experience like during filming? Because I got the director's experience. How did it feel as an actor to be directed, to be in that
Oh,
chaos, organized chaos?
acting is, I would say, I always describe it as hurry and wait. That's what you do. It's all about you preparing, but Johnny's going to set up a vision. He's got a certain way he wants something to look, and he's going to say, "I want this to look like this." But then I have to start thinking about, well, then how does Prescott react within that environment, within that darkness? Does he, so there's a lot of back and forth with a director, with an actor. I think with this character for me is I really wanted Johnny's input because we only saw this little brief moment of this guy in this other fan film a long time ago. I've got to develop something that's 15 years later, 12 years later. What's he like? And I needed to have a director that really understood acting, understood the performance level. And that was the great thing about working with Johnny is, we had that opportunity. Here was somebody who wasn't going to just worry about, did I get an angle? It's just, did I get an angle on the performance? And that, is as an actor, that's a dream. That's what I want to work with. A lot of fan films, you're lucky somebody can hold the camera. That's why you see, some of the bad dialogue that you do. It's not really that it's necessarily written horribly. It's just there's nothing in the delivery because nobody told the person how to do it. And they didn't want to go bother and go, well, I'm not going to go take an acting class or something. Well, then, maybe that is a reason to not perform in something. But it's a joy as an actor to have a real director who's not only looking at what it looks like on screen, but what it comes out of the screen in the performance.
Now, what sorts of preparation would you do with Johnny, and did you do any preparation with the other actors? Like, did you and John, when you had a scene together, did you do any rehearsals of things like that? What was the preparation that went into this?
We did a lot of Zoom calls back and forth, kind of re-going through scenes, talking about how it was going to sound, what was going to be this interaction between Wes and I, and how we were going to have this relationship between the characters. What's interesting is, this is another nice thing about working with Johnny, because he encouraged it, was that as an actor, a lot of times you want to create imaginary backstory. You want to create a little bit more than what's being seen on screen, so that you have something as a performer to fall back on, that's part of their motivation. The audience doesn't always have to see it. It can be physical. It can be the unexplained limp. It could be a way a person leans. It could be the fact that they chew on their cheek. It could be something in the way they talk. It could be something in why they say it a way that they do. And that was what all this little backstory that we did, and we would do that with the different characters. Even if the actor wasn't kind of jumping into it already, we would do that when we were rehearsing with him. Johnny would say a little bit, yeah, but what if it is past this happened to him, and what happens if this happened? So I was even saying to Holly during the premiere that when I wrote the scenes between her and Prescott, to going back and forth. And I'm hoping the audience catches it. There's an extra bit of animosity of the big three that Prescott has Smithfield. There's something extra hate, and my backstory when I wrote that in the original screenplay, and then we kind of kept a lot of those elements mostly in the story. But my backstory in my head was in the mirror universe. Prescott had murdered the Farragut crew, so that's why he was the captain. He killed Carter, Tackett, and Smithfield. But I think Smithfield was one of his allies until she fell in love with Tackett, who was Carter's best friend, and then she betrayed him, and that's when Carter took his eye, and then, so I had this whole story, and that's why he hated her more, because she was a traitor.
I'd read that.
I'd call that Farragut backward.
But you know what? It created something. So when I'm talking to her and Logan was someone that Prescott didn't spend as much time with, because he was on the bridge and she was at her seat in the front. But the way he says her name, like this sickening, sweet kind of, but the way he talks to Smithfield is entirely from that backstory. It's that snarky, like you would talk to somebody, it's like, yeah, oh, it's you. Yeah, the one that hit my car. Yeah, jerk.
Yeah, and definitely different than the way he talks to Carter.
The way he talks to Carter, entirely different. The way he talks to Valal, entirely different. The only one he does use that tone with Koroth a little bit, because Koroth, he plays as a fool. And that's why he talks down to him. But with Smithfield, it's that icky, teasy, but that's all because of this little backstory. This that I created in my head, and then I refined with Johnny, and he goes like, "Ooh, let's use that." Like, when we were first rehearsing on the bridge, you talk about the 360, the beautiful 360 Klingon bridge. We're first rehearsing on it, and I'm going through, but practicing my lines. Johnny's setting stuff up. I like to, if I can, I like to do a few rehearsals in my own head while I'm walking around the set, and I'm walking around and I lean into the view screen and like, yeah, hey. And I was just like joking around, like I was looking around like, oh yeah. And I went back and I'm practicing my lines, and Johnny goes, oh, we got to put the camera right here and have you end that scene. I'm like, he goes like, no, like you were just leaning up in oh, you got to do that line like that. And I said, oh, but the whole tone of the line will have to change it. So that what he was doing changed my delivery, even with my little backstory. He changed my delivery because of what he wanted to do with the camera. All of a sudden that became more evil and less playful than he was being with her. And it just went dark. And it was just like, oh, but that was all because he saw me joking around and leans in. Then he comes back and goes like, oh man, we have to put the camera. It was like this beautiful moment. That's what you kind of collaboration you get when you have a good director who's open-minded, but also has his own vision. Those things combined together as an actor is a dream. It really does make it great to be on a set with Johnny. And when he's casting his next movie.
Oh, there you go. I was just going to ask, did Johnny ever say, don't do it that way, try it a different way as well?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Again.
Yeah. Any good director will tell you, because, you may be thinking something in your head and he's going to see how it looks. And that doesn't always work. I as an Italian-American actor, I can tell you one of my biggest problems is too much of this. And Johnny will say, like, hey, don't talk with your hands so much in that scene, Prescott. So it's like, make fists in my hands or hold them down, because I just have that tendency to do that. Oh yeah, he'll tell me, that doesn't look good. Let's try it a different way. But yeah, that's what he's supposed to do. So good job.
Paul, thank you. Paul had so many good little ideas, and they're all small things, but when you wrap them all up in the performance, when we were down in Hopewell doing the exteriors, Prescott got his hand on the phaser that he took from Smithfield, and I was watching Paul, and he was just kind of examining, this phaser. And in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, he's spending a lot of time, just kind of looking at this thing. And I said something to Paul about it. I wasn't opposed to it. I was just curious why he was doing it. And Prescott said he's been locked up 15 years. He's never seen this model. He's not seen anything like this. This is kind of new tech for him. And that's just a small example of just something I thought was so cool. And it made the final cut, that he grabs the phaser, he's just looking at it. And even before he he shoots in that direction. I think he's just kind of taunting. And before he does all that, he's just kind of examining this text. So it's a lot of little stuff like that, that not just Paul, but a lot of the other actors, they bring all this to the table. You can't write that in a script. You can't plan for that in advance. It just kind of happens on set, and it makes the whole thing sweeter.
I love it when a director and an actor have that synergy that you guys have. Because we're kind of, in Wrath of Khan mode. Are you guys familiar with the Nick Myers story of his first interaction directing Ricardo Montalban? Have you ever heard that story?
I know I've heard it, but I don't remember it now. Tell us.
I'm going to tell the story.
I worship Nick Meyer. I love Nick Meyer.
Nick Meyer was great. I saw him doing a director's commentary at a Star Trek II showing about maybe 20 years ago or so. And Nick was saying, directing Montalban was intimidating, especially for Nick Meyer, who was just moving out of television, and this was his first motion picture. And Montalban was coming off of Fantasy Island, so they had an entire week to do blocking and rehearsals and everything. And he walks in there on the first day of filming, so nobody's really seen him yet. He hasn't prepped with anybody. But he introduces himself. Hello, how are you? Good to be here. Gets in the costume, gets in the makeup, and they're starting to do Khan's first scene. And Myers explaining it, and he says, it's basically his whole backstory. His wife is dead, and he blames Kirk, and he said he had like 5 pages of dialogue to do, and like 7 different marks to hit, and he's hitting every single one of these marks. And we're doing the rehearsal, and he's just, the set is shaking with the rage and the intensity of his emotions, and he finishes, and we're all just quivering with, we've just seen this amazing performance. And I'm thinking, as the director, this isn't what I want. This is too much. And how do I tell him this? This is Ricardo Montalban. He's a very famous actor, and he's a huge presence. And so Nick said, so I said, cut. Ricardo, that was great. That was amazing. Everybody else, let's take 5. Let's reset everything. Ricardo, can I talk to you in your dressing room for a sec? And Ricardo goes into the dressing room, and the entire way there, Nick is saying to himself, like, okay, how do I tell him not to do what he just did? As a director, it's very difficult when you've never worked with an actor before to know what you can and can't say to them. And so they both sit down, and Nick says, I think it was Laurence Olivier who once said, never show the audience your highest, because then you don't have anywhere else to go. And Ricardo says, yes. And he's like, so let me ask you a question, Ricardo. When is a madman most terrifying? Is it when he is yelling and raging, and Ricardo interrupts and says, or when he's not? When he is quiet. And then you're always wondering, when will he explode? And if he doesn't, oh, I see. You are going to direct me. And that broke the ice. And what Ricardo Montalban said is, he usually got onto sets, and the directors would all say, oh, Ricardo, you're classically trained, all this stuff. Whatever you think is right is what we're going to go with. And as an actor, he doesn't want that. He wants to know he is basically a person who is painting whatever the artist tells him to paint. As an actor, he can deliver this. He can deliver this. He can deliver anything in between. He just has to know what to do. And all these directors who say, well, Ricardo, whatever you think is right is the best, is like, no, I want to know. So he was so excited by this that at that point, every moment after that, every take would always end with Ricardo saying, was that too much? I can do it again. I can do it. I can take it down. And he's like, no, 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 that was great. Like, oh, one more time. I can hold it back a little bit more. Um, but it was just really that was the synergy that Nick Meyer and Ricardo Montalban had together. And obviously you saw what happened. Um, so that just I'm really inspired to know, especially with the amazing performance that Paul had in this, how much went into it from both of you guys. It really showed. All right, so let's wrap up with post-production, which doesn't involve Paul as much, but certainly involves Johnny. So you've got all this footage, you're getting your visual effects in from Samuel Cockings in Great Britain. You're getting your music in, you're getting sound effects, whatever else. So now what are you doing? You're locking yourself in your room and not coming out for how many months, and what's going on?
Yeah, we had the luxury just because the production of Farragut Forward went basically 2 years, almost 2 years. I edited as I went. I did not want to wait until the very end. Okay, now we've shot everything. Now let me go back and just start from scratch. By the time we shot the Hopewell stuff, the exteriors, which was the last thing we shot, basically the rest of the movie was all there, just waiting, including the ending, which was shot in sick bay and on the bridge. There was just a huge gap between the 70th and the 90th percentile mark. All that was missing. So I had edited pretty much everything throughout. Now, you never know what it's all going to look like all strung together until you see it the very first time. And I'm talking pacing, tempo, the transitions between scenes, which, you have to get those right. You don't know all of that until you actually sit down and watch it strung together for the first time. And after we plugged in all the Hopewell stuff, we got it in there. The ship effects from Sam, who did an amazing job, by the way. Sam and I worked very closely over the last couple of years. Sam probably has blocked my number now and probably never wants to hear from me again. I was always I'm a detail oriented guy, so Sam would deliver this masterpiece, and I would say, yeah, the light back here on the twinkling nacelle, but. So Sam might be tired of hearing from me, but he did an amazing job, and the rest of the team that worked on the ship stuff. I at least had the previs of all those shots in, even if they weren't the final renders. I at least had previs so I could see, okay, this is how we will cut to this. If we're going to transition to a bridge scene, from an exterior ship shot, it would be great to have that ship shot close on a close up of the bridge module. And it was little things like that. I asked Sam, hey, can we end the shot with just a real tight push in on the bridge module? Because that'll transition us right into the bridge, falling apart, just things like that. But yeah, the editing itself, I'm happy to say not a whole lot changed. I was afraid I would have to go back and recut entire scenes once I saw the whole movie stuck together. Actually, really didn't happen. Most of the cutting I did, a couple years ago, right after the sick bay shoot, some of those scenes stayed completely intact. There was one I'm particularly proud of, which I called it my oneer. I wanted a one shot coming into sick bay. We started in the corridor with David Agatsons, one of our producers, David A., carrying Ava, who's John's daughter, into sick bay. He's got a line of dialogue in the corridor. Corridor's on fire. He goes into sick bay. Camera follows him in, and then it's chaos. And then the camera just lingers, and that was my oneer. And we originally shot that as like a 45-second or 1 minute shot. It was a long, long one shot. It wasn't quite Ray Liotta walking through the bar in Goodfellas, but it was a very, very long shot, especially for a fan film. And a lot of that scene specifically, it stayed pretty much the exact same cut from what it was 2 years ago. So when we finally got all the footage in the can, there wasn't a lot of work I had to go back and recut. It was more just about the transitions and just kind of polishing it and getting the pace of the movie to a point that I felt that it was moving along. And like you mentioned before, John, not I didn't want to bog us down with anything or any particular scene. The first scene on the Farragut Bridge that opens up with Logan's mug, I can tell you I ended up cutting, I did it all in one day. I cut about 45 seconds to a minute out of that scene because it was stretching very long. And I mean, 45 seconds to a minute is that's a lot of footage, being cut out. Didn't cut any lines, just cut a lot of the stuff in between just to keep the story moving, because that kind of first quarter of the movie, that's when you're in jeopardy of you've not yet got everyone invested yet. And if you're going to lose them, you don't want to lose them right then. You want them to make it past the halfway point. So editing's fun. I actually really enjoy editing. I get to sit by myself in a quiet room for 12 hours and blind myself with a monitor, but I
Watching
enjoy
the
the
same
editing.
scene over and over and over again. Not even the
Repeat.
same scene, the same 3 frames over and over. And like, should we take it in that? Yeah.
Yeah.
My son still has horror stories when I was editing Interlude. It's like if I hear that same line from Alec again, I am going to scream. Uh, finally had to go to headphones. But yeah, it's a crazy process. Now, as you were doing the editing, I'm guessing you were working with John Broughton to get feedback along the way, or was it just pretty much you and
John was exceptionally trusting of me, and I appreciate that. This is John's baby. Paul mentioned that before. Farragut is John Broughton. None of this would exist without John. John was exceptionally trusting with me. John saw some of the. John would see the quote unquote dailies after every shoot. I would very quickly cut together what we got, and some of the time I would do that just to show the cast and crew to kind of keep the motivation up. Hey, all your hard work, you don't have to wait 2 years to see it. Like, look at this. This is some footage that we got from last weekend. And I would put that up. So John would see, kind of scenes here and there, very rough, nothing final, just rough cut stuff. John actually did not see the rough cut of the film until he came over here to the house, maybe 2 months before the release of the film. That's the first time John had seen all of Farragut from start to finish. And we just talked through it, and he had very, very few notes. And a lot of the things he noticed were things that I didn't quite catch, just some of the console stuff and the fonts and things that diehard Star Trek people would give us a hard time about if we didn't get that right. John is a veteran of some of those battles, so he's
oh
probably
yeah.
more expecting of it. But John had very few notes about the rough cut. And then the rough cut was polished and became the final cut, which became the premiere party cut. And that was the very next time John saw it. So yeah, John, it's not like John was over here every 2 hours with us leaning over each other's shoulders talking about which take we should use. He was exceptionally trusting of me to be able to kind of cut the movie together as I saw best and then show it to him. And it worked out. And I happen to work very well like that too. So I'm glad John and I didn't have to roll around on the carpet punching each other over anything. So, and I appreciate it. I appreciate his trust.
Did anybody else see it or give you any feedback, like your wife or any friends or anything like that?
Yeah, Heather, Heather. Other than me, Heather is the only person that's seen Farragut Forward about 700 times. Yeah, but I tried to shield her from it. I didn't want her to become as numb to it as I'd become. 2 years on, those jokes aren't funny to me anymore. Bermuda Triangle hasn't been funny to me for 2 years, 2.5 years. The awkward Vulcan clap hasn't been funny to me for 2 years. So you kind of have to get some objectivity and distance. And I did not have that. I was in the thick of it all through the edit. So I tried to shield Heather, even though I wanted to. Hey, come look at this. Look at that. I'm very excited about it. Come. I tried not to do that. And I would just wait until I got it to a point, and then I would sit her down on the couch and we would watch a rough cut or just an assembly cut. And yeah, she was my best sounding board throughout the whole process. I think she probably got pretty tired of hearing the same lines over and over and over again. But yeah, absolutely, Heather, just a huge shout out. And she was one of our production managers, for some of the shoot. She was our primary craft service person that helped feed the crew with lots of healthy options. So other than being my sounding board on the couch, she was a pretty critical part of the production for the last couple of years. So.
Oh, that is awesome. And at this point, it looks like you've had just amazingly positive feedback. Has anybody given you any complaints about it? Anybody given you any criticisms, or have you not even looked at your comments?
Oh, I look at them. I don't obsess over them. I look at them. It's 99.9% positive. There's always going to be the one that, well, actually, your color is gunship gray. It should really be more of a, battleship gray instead of a gunship gray. And that's fine. I mean, that's fine. If that's what you got out of 52 minutes of Farragut Forward. That's
If
what you
that's your
got out
biggest
of.
complaint, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's always some like that. I don't know, Paul. You've probably seen some comments here and there too. They're all good stuff mostly.
Yeah, I mean they're all good. You always have, I've always find the funny thing is like, like Johnny says, you get those sometimes more technical questions. I think one of the few negative ones I think I've seen was somebody talking about, battleship regulations and that these people would be kicked out of their command for what they did. And it was just like, this isn't the real military. This is Star
Yeah.
Trek, and it's about friendship. You kind of missed the whole point of the story.
Friendship
So
and family, yeah.
either we didn't get it going, considering that 99% of the rest of the universe seems to have gotten that point. I think this is on you. So, just you have to take the good with the bad. But Star Trek fans, and I warned Johnny about this very early on. Star Trek fans are the best and worst fans in the universe. They're the best because there's so many, but you can see all the volunteers and the financial help that people gave to the production. They're the worst because they are the nitpickiest, most critical you've ever seen. You could have a 600-pound person come up to you and say, there's too many big people in your fan film. What? You look like I do. It's just, it's amazing. It's just, they're very, they're a rough crowd. It can be fun
They
to go to
certainly
a
can be, yeah.
convention and they,
You know the
get mad at you.
the comments I've enjoyed the most actually seeing is and this was a goal of ours, and I think this goes back to the original script. Uh, this was not, you didn't need to come in with 20 years of Farragut backstory to enjoy Farragut Forward. That was a goal of mine. Can we put together a movie that I could show somebody's mom, and that has nothing to do with Trek or fan films, and they can get it, they can follow it. We didn't want to bog this thing down with exposition to talk about all these relationships. There's 20 years of YouTube videos. You can go get all that.
Why was that horrible man getting electrocuted? Why did
Right.
he want to be more electrocuted?
Right. But the comments we're seeing, and I've seen a lot of these where it said, this is my first exposure to Starship Farragut. And now that I've seen this, it's whetted my appetite to kind of go back and, check out all the other stuff. So I think that's a really cool thing to see, is to not have the expectation that the only people watching Farragut Forward are the Farraguteers that have been around for 20 years. No, this is kind of catching a new audience that's then, whetting their appetite to go back and watch some of the older stuff. I think those are some of my favorite comments to read.
I just saw one earlier today, and the person said very similar to what you stated, that they'd never seen anything Farragut before, but they didn't feel that they actually had to go back and watch anything else because they felt everything was explained to them enough for them to enjoy the story. Not this, like you said, not a long exposition, but they felt that, oh, okay, I didn't need any primer for this. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yep. You did a great
that
job
was
at
it.
that.
We didn't have
so that was pretty cool.
We
You
didn't
don't
have
need
much
Farragut
time.
backward to go Farragut forward.
That's right. We didn't have time for exposition.
So, Johnny, what is next for you? You're getting out of Star Trek fan films into other things. What are your plans?
I'm taking a break. I'm taking a break. I've threatened. I've got an unfinished short film that I'm looking forward to getting back to after my break. Farragut was Farragut was incredible, but Farragut was a very long, loud, explosive, dynamic, very active project. And I have no qualms about maybe the next film. I've threatened this. I think it might be two people in a car on a rainy night with no dialogue, and we can shoot it in a weekend. I have somebody ask me, like, what are you going to do that's going to be bigger than this? Bigger, this Farragut was bigger than the Oath. The Oath was bigger than Killer Grassy Ridge. I feel no compulsion to go bigger, bigger, bigger. I want maybe something quiet, and as long as it's meaningful, quiet, meaningful. I'm an indie filmmaker. I have no problem cranking out a 10-minute movie every now and then and seeing if somebody online, checks it out and enjoys it. I don't mind going back to something like that. Oath 2, tentatively named Oath Harder. It's a joke. It won't be called that. But
that's a Batman.
Yeah, that's been out there for a while. We got a lot of demand to come back and do a second Oath, and
the costume.
Oh, we got a lot of stuff, and there's some ideas kicking around. There actually is a treatment right now that I've kind of just been working on downtime here and there. But Yeah, next thing for me is I'm going to enjoy the holidays. I think the holidays for me are going to start about right now. It's October as we record this, and I might just enjoy a few months off, to be honest with you.
After delivering all those supplies to the folks who are suffering in Tennessee, and
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
then you can go relax for a little bit. Paul, how about you? What's next on your itinerary?
Well, I had taken a bit of an acting break. My wife and I relocated to the lower, slower Delaware, and it lives up to expectation. It's a bit of a downsize for us, so I've been doing a lot and kind of getting things prepped over here. So really, the only acting project I was been working on recently was Farragut. But prior to that, I've been doing a lot of dinner theater. So hoping to get back into that, maybe some more stage work. There's not as much film activity where I'm at that there was when I was in DC. That was always very easy to get into. But I'll continue to explore. I have a couple of filmmakers I've been talking to. I've got I wrote a Frankenstein screenplay that I would love to get to somebody someday to actually try to do something with. I'm pretty proud of it. It was a couple of years of work. It was a modern adaptation. It follows Shelley's story, but in current day. But so I had that, and I'm hoping to try to get the dinner theater going back out here in Delaware. Talking maybe to the company I used to do the murder mystery dinner theater with, and see if I can get a troupe started out here. That would be kind of fun. To get back into that. As much as I enjoy doing film, there is some extra pleasure as an actor when you're in front of an audience. It's very energizing. So I think I'm going to probably focus on some stage stuff for a while.
Oh, cool. Back when I used to
And
do
I will
stand-up.
be back in
Okay.
the next Farragut.
Oh, you will.
Yes, but not as Prescott.
Oh,
Prescott's are dead. I will actually be the Afrosian chief engineer of the Farragut.
oh, well,
So,
that's cool. It's a lot of
yeah.
makeup.
A lot of makeup again. Yeah, to hide so that I don't look like Prescott. So
By
Don't
the way, I was
choke
going
me.
to say,
I'll
by the way,
choke everybody.
I was going to say back when I did stand-up comedy, I had a little routine about some of the states, and I had mentioned Delaware, which was a great state. It had three counties, two at high tide. Um,
That's good.
that was
That's
good.
pretty
Yeah,
good. That's pretty good.
yeah. I remember that one, and the one about New Mexico, which I decided that it needed a new state motto: New Mexico, not really new, not really Mexico. Uh,
I saw Yakov Smirnoff back in the 1980s, and he made a joke about I was in college in Cleveland, and he made a Cleveland joke, and the audience started to boo, and he goes like, "Oh, I'm sorry." He goes, "But in every country, we have a city we make fun of. Like in Russia, we make fun of Cleveland." So
Oh, that's great. Uh, all righty. Well, anyway, but yes, as Paul said, Farragut will be back. A lot of folks thought that Farragut Ford was going to be a one and done, but apparently is going to be at least a two and done, possibly a three and done, possibly more. And when I finally have Mr. John Broughton here, he will be chatting about what is ahead, more forward on Farragut Forward, but it's very, very exciting. I know what's going to be happening. Josh Irwin will be directing the next one, and it's going to have a lot of outdoor scenes in a city that will be a very interesting place. It's a place that Star Trek has not been to before. We've been to Los Angeles, we've been to San Francisco, we've been to Oklahoma, we've been to Toronto. We have not been to the nation's capital yet. So, anyway, guys, I want to thank you for your time today and congratulate you once again for just a masterpiece. It's a true masterpiece, both of you, and not even both of you. The 60, 70, 100, 150. I have no idea how many people worked on this thing, but honestly, everybody deserves a round of applause with my hands that can't really clap except on the fingers. Just really remarkable, stunning, magnificent. If you haven't watched Farragut Forward, go watch it now. If you have, go watch it again. Tell your friends to watch it. It's really worth it. All righty, folks. I will see if I can do a Vulcan salute with my bandaged hand there, and I will say, live long and prosper, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.